What's up, everybody? Do you have these things in life that just keep on coming up again and again and again and again and yet again? Well, you're in luck because today's episode, we're
For
going
the
to be
third
talking
time.
about recognizing patterns in life. This is the Existential Stoic podcast, episode 175. I'm
Woo!
Rand. I know, right? That's a lot of
Right?
episodes.
Long
I'm
episode.
Randy. That's Danny. What's up, Danny?
What's up, Randy? I think it's a crazy pattern that we keep making them. It's good. I
It's a
recognize the
great
pattern.
pattern. It's a
It is.
great
It's like one of
pattern.
my
It feels
favorites.
good. Yeah.
It does.
Yeah. So I was thinking about this episode because, you know, in life, there are just these things that just like keep smacking you in the face over and over and over
Yeah,
again.
dude.
And, like some of them get better each time, some of them stay the same, some get worse. Uh, have you experienced things like
Yeah,
this?
it does. Done. No,
Mhm.
it's funny you mentioned. As soon as you mentioned, the first thing I thought of was oh my God, so many times, especially to do like back when you know, I think back in the past when I used to like use drugs more often too, especially like the ups and downs. It was such a regular pattern. Once you like get out of it and realize you're like, it's like being a masochist. It's insane because it's these like such highs and lows. And like I was just immediately thinking of that, but also then like just so many other times in life too, where like I like the patterns we get stuck in where like you don't deal with things like the same thing over and over again, and then you finally deal with it. It's super easy, and you're like, oh, why did I do that? But then it comes up again, and the same thing happens, and like I notice like even like nowadays, like I'm getting so much better with dealing like when I'm down or I don't feel good, but it's still like the same thing. Like it always takes me a day or two to realize it and like be aware and then switch my mindset and perspective. And like it gets easier, but it's still there. That pattern is very fixed. I think we're like creatures of habits and they just
Mhm.
stick with us. It takes a lot to break them until I break out of them.
Yeah. And particularly feeling with those things when you're not feeling great. Like,
Yeah.
when I think about these patterns that keep smacking me on the face, I'm not thinking about these happy moments and like things going well. It's like those aren't the instances that come up when I'm thinking about patterns. It's like, for example, like this week, I was struck by like loneliness. Not because I'm all by myself. I'm actually surrounded by a bunch of people. I interact with people all the time, but like the feeling of loneliness.
I
And
get that a lot too. Yeah, it's weird. It's a weird one.
yeah, yeah, and it's crazy because like, we speak on a regular basis. I speak with my dad and my brother and other people on a regular basis, and yet here I am feeling like alone, and then thinking about like how can I get rid of this feeling?
Yeah. And it's like
Yeah.
a weird feeling of I always find it's like a weird feeling of isolation almost, but not like physically alone or like socially alone, but like alone, like no one would ever understand you or something weird like that. Like almost like, does that make sense? And
Yeah.
like you're always on the outside of this, even though you're not. And like it's like that's the funny part. Like, yeah, that comes up a lot. I hear you on that one. It's a weird one. It's a
Yeah,
tough
it's
one.
like yeah, it's like this feeling. It's like this feeling of wholeness that is what I want. But
Yeah.
sometimes, but like I don't think it's anything outside of me really. I think it's just more me actually paying attention to myself to feel that wholeness here now.
I think it's what we all want though, right? We all want to
Hmm.
feel that way. Feel whole, feel purposeful, feel happy, feel me, whatever. And it's like, but like when you focus on it, there's always something missing, I think. Or if you focus on it in the wrong way, maybe it's like, or think about it in the wrong way. It's hard because I think it's funny. There is like positive patterns I've noticed too. Like there are like ones where like I've noticed in the last few years, I've been trying to deal with all like the difficult things that I need to deal with right away. And every time I do, I notice how easy they are or how simple it was. If you don't put it off, and like that pattern's great. It's a good pattern. Like, because I'm starting to like constantly finally reinforce, like, just do it. It's just fine. Just do it. It doesn't matter. And like, even if it doesn't go well, it doesn't matter at the end of the day. It really doesn't. Like, just do it and get over it and move on. And like, I think so. There are positive ones too, but it is the negative ones. I think that like they just hit you so hard. And you're like, this again. Like,
Yeah.
here we are
Yeah.
again.
Yeah. Well, that's actually I'd like to highlight that a little bit, that pattern that you talk about just addressing things head on when they come up. Because I've noticed
Yeah.
that too, how like the big things that we put off, we can keep putting them off forever. But then
Yeah.
it's something that you almost need to train your brain to, like you were mentioning, that like once you just take it on, it's done. Like it
Yeah.
literally all this thought that you have about however hard it's gonna be, you just take it on and it's done.
Oh, dude. we are so stupid. And when I say that, I mean like I am so stupid. Like I realized this the other day,
I'm
dude.
right there. I'm
Like
right there with you.
yeah, dude, it's like so dumb. Like I realized the other day, and I just was like, oh my God, I can't believe I like didn't like this wasn't like clear to me before. But like every time I have like a problem with someone, like either like my partner or like a friend or something, like just address it right then and there. And like even if it's uncomfortable or it's weird or it's awkward, just say it. Because even if like chances are, like at least for me, I probably misread something. Like 99.99% of the time, I would say like I misinterpreted something, and then like then it's out of the way and you get to talk about it and it's over and the wait's done. But if you don't, then it just bubbles up and then you imagine all these things and like it gets worse and then it gets all twisted and then you even forget what the hell the thing was in the first place. Like you totally forget because your imagination just goes crazy. It's like I can't believe how like dumb we are most of the time that we try to like make everything. I don't know. We always try to make everything seem like it's okay or perfect when it's like just address it. It's really
That's a
weird.
really good point for taking it on early, because I totally relate with what you're saying, where
Oh yeah,
the more you put it off, like then
dude.
before
There's been
long you're just arguing. You don't even remember why you're angry with the person. You're just like,
yeah, totally.
I'm holding a grudge because of something you did years ago. I don't remember what it was, but I'm holding that grudge.
And it like perverts everything else too, because like that grudge like starts to color how you're seeing them now, even and it might not even be accurate. And like I've had that happen, like I've noticed that more and more now, and like it's just like dealing with it. And it's hard because it is hard to address right away. Don't get me wrong, like, I'm not saying I'm perfect at it at all by any means. Like it's difficult for some, and I don't even know why it's difficult. That's the funny, like I still can't figure this out, like why it's hard, because it's
I
not
would
like when you
say
do it, it's not. But like
I would say it goes back like, okay, so the more I read and the more I experience this stuff in life, I think it comes down to like integrity and like being honest with ourselves. Okay.
oh yeah,
So like in those moments, for instance, when you feel something is off with somebody else, okay, rather than being honest with ourselves because it's painful in the moment that we feel this way and there's something going on, we're like, maybe I'll just lie to myself a little bit and it'll be less painful right now. And so
yeah,
like for me, I think back to childhood, because like when you're a child, you're just like loving life, enjoying life, and then you break something and
yeah.
an adult gets angry and they're like, did you do this? And it's like, well, I can be honest and then I get spanked, or I can lie and then not deal with the pain. Maybe I'll try
Yeah.
lying. And so like I think it's something that we need to deal with, like being honest with ourselves. But it's something where you really need to be present in order to recognize that you're lying to yourself at the moment.
I think no, I think you're right. I think that is the hard part because it is like, I mean, personal honesty is hands down like probably the most important thing for happiness. I think like being honest with yourself, but like at the same time, I think you're right. Like I don't even, and that's what I was trying to figure out. I guess like I don't even know if it is a fault, like necessarily a fault of like not recognition, but not being present or self aware enough to see what you're doing. It's like you do it so fast, and it's so like instinctual almost, and like trained. It's like those deep habits, right? That you just like immediately. "Oh, I just won't say anything. I just won't, I'll just pretend like it's not there, and it'll go away. And it doesn't go away. It just stays there. It gets worse. Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
And oftentimes like when we have these anger and like all of those feelings, it's because we're in the present or the past. It's not actually what's
yeah,
happening, or we're in the future or the past, excuse me. We're not actually in the present when we experience those things. We're imagining these things happening in the future or things that happened in the past, and we're getting angry about that. And so kind of trying to stay somewhat present. But
I do think it is. I mean, we talked about this before, but the negative visualization, imagine the thing like 100 times or 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times, that can be
mhm,
very helpful for a lot of things. Even like with like I found even with because like a lot of times people give the example, and I think even like Alex Ramosi might have given the example, or how do you pronounce the last name? Might have given the example of like like ruining a nice shirt that he just got, and I'm like imagining like if that happened 1,000 times, would you care? No, it's just a shirt. It's whatever, it doesn't matter. Like a lot of people usually use like objects as examples, but like if you use like I think even interpersonal relationships, it works really well because it's like if that person did that 1,000 times, would it really be that big of a deal? Is it that big of a deal, or am I just making it a big deal? Like
mhm.
because I think oftentimes too we're not thinking of their perspective. We're not thinking outside of ourselves either. And like when you start to think beyond like your little like moment too, and you're present about like, also like their perspective, their consciousness, like it does change things a lot, and like the reasons change why something would happen. I don't know if that makes sense at all.
Well, I like that example because when you were mentioning that, I was thinking about like the first time I ever broke up with a girl. I was like heartbroken. Like I thought my life was over. And then like it happened again and again
Yeah.
and again and again and again and again and again. And like
And love.
by this point, it's kind of just like, okay, fine. I'll be sad for a little bit. Then I'll go back to the gym. I'll start socializing with people again. It'll be fine. So like,
Yeah.
but it's like learning to do that. And I think it's also important to do it like in relationship with your partner, like you were mentioning, where if you can just, when you have some free time, just sit down and imagine you and your partner getting into an argument where you both are just like fuming and hate each other, and then
Yeah.
talking, resolving, getting over it. And you just practice that in your mind 10 times or 100 times or 1,000 times. Then the next time that happens, you'll be like, oh, that's just one of these things. Okay, we get angry with each other, we
Yeah.
fume, we say things we regret, and then we talk about it and we get over it. Okay, just one of those things. Let's do it.
Yeah, we have a roadmap, right? We have a plan. We know what we're doing. Like, yeah, exactly. Like, I think that's the funny thing about patterns is like, I think the more we see them, like, the easier it gets to navigate our own habits, our own sort of like idiosyncrasies, our own tendencies, and also get to sometimes break out of them, which can be very helpful. It takes work though, I think. And I think this is the part, like we talked about this before, like wanting to be really good at something the second you start it, right? The same's true for like also like character and habits, and like we think we know the answer. Like I just got to be present, or I just got to be aware of my emotion, and that's a good starting point. But it's like, yeah, that's true, but you have to do it over and over again. Like I think, like we talked about Marcus Aurelius is such a good example because his whole entire thing is like going back to the same problems over and over because he's not perfect, and like has to keep reminding himself, has to keep on top of it. Like you have to have this checklist that you keep telling yourself, okay, this is still the case. I can still handle it. I can get through this. This is fine, and that's okay. Like there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, and I think it's important that in the beginning we're not good at it. Like you
Yeah.
mentioned, it's very difficult early on. Because I think back to when I was a veterinarian, and like pattern recognition was huge. Because
Yes,
by the time I was doing it for 10 years, I literally like just heard what the pet was coming in for, and I knew what was wrong with it.
yeah, yeah,
Like I didn't need to
yeah.
look at the pet, but that's like a double-edged sword because you can also get stuck in that pattern where you think that something is wrong with it, and because you think that's wrong, that's what you're finding. So like
Or
it's a
you don't make
double-edged
like
sword.
you don't adopt new things that are like better, maybe. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. But like the other so but I also remember back when I first started as a vet because I knew theoretically every disease. Theoretically.
yeah.
But
Theoretically,
but I remember the first couple of months when I was working and a dog would come in with an ear infection and I wouldn't know how to diagnose it. I wouldn't know how to treat it. So like I I knew theoretically, but I didn't know the patterns. I didn't know how to treat it, all this different stuff. So it's kind of like same thing with what we're doing in programming or anything else in life. It's kind of like you need to start out just being absolutely terrible, and then you just put in the work, do the iterations. Eventually, it gets to be like old hat, and you don't have any
yeah.
problems with it.
It's funny too because I think like the thing that I've been reminding myself the most of recently is like life just isn't. It's life can be really fun and really enjoyable and really great, but it's not easy. And it just isn't. I don't think it ever is. And like I think that's the lie we tell ourselves, right? Is that it'll be easy when this, because like, and a lot of times, like, yeah, things will get easier the more you do them. But generally speaking, the more you do them, the more you add to it too. You add new things because you want to keep developing and stuff. So you really just make it the same level of hard the whole time. You know what I mean? Like it just
Mhm.
isn't. Like even relationships, like they get easier for sure. Like and they can be in a really good place, and they hopefully do get there. But like at the same time, they always take work. Like things always take some level of something, right, in order for them to keep going. So yeah.
Yeah, you make a good point. Like I've heard it said the SEALs, they say like the Navy SEALs, they say the only easy day was yesterday, which makes sense.
Yeah, yeah,
but but I also like to add something to that where like I recognize the only easy day was yesterday, and every day my life is getting better and my best days are ahead of me. So like
yeah.
I like to look at both sides of it because like there's something drawing me towards the future, and then I realize that like yeah, of course today's not easy because yesterday was the only easy day.
Yeah, yeah. It's the only easy day. It's such a helpful, it's funny though. It's like I found it so helpful recently though, that like that mentality and like gratitude and stuff is like to help me like just deal like, because I do know my patterns more now. Like, and like I mentioned to you earlier, like I wasn't feeling good last week. No idea why. I have no clue what it was. Like it could have been weather, could have been like allergies, could have been all these things. But like I found it a lot easier to just let myself rest than I think it's been in a long time. And it was really nice because I think I recognized my pattern ahead of time that like I'm gonna get mad at myself, depressed, angry, frustrated. And I just like I realized it ahead of time, kind of laughed at myself, and then I was like, I'm just gonna watch it and just forget it. And like I felt so much better and just realized like all the stuff I was stressed about. And I might have also been overworked. It's also possible. I might have like pushed myself too hard. It's like I probably needed it. And like once I gave myself that opportunity, it was great. It's like it's just I feel so much better now. Like,
Dude, I'm right there with you. Like I laugh a lot because I think that I'm just a big baby most of the time. Like
I'm just a total bitch.
we're like we're
I'm
like I
such a
get
bitch.
tired,
Like,
I get tired, and then I get cranky, and then nothing's going well. Like yesterday was when I was feeling like the height of this loneliness, and I was just, even though I wasn't doing anything, I was mentally searching the entire day for like what's this thing that's going to cure the loneliness. And then around like 6 or 7 o'clock at night, I was waiting for something, and I started like almost falling asleep in the chair. And I realized I was like, oh yeah, like last night I only slept 5 hours, and the night
you're
before that only
exhausted.
like 6 or 7 hours. And I'm like, I'm probably really tired. And then like so I went to sleep early and I slept like way longer than I normally sleep. And this morning I wake up feeling quite all right. But it's just like
Yeah.
that I'm just a big baby where I get tired and then cranky and then nothing's working well.
Yeah, but dude, noticing that is so helpful though, because like I notice that, dude. I do that all the time now with like eating too. I notice like if I haven't eaten recently, like I get so angry and frustrated, and like until I realize like, oh, I'm just hungry, and it goes away. But it's totally the reason. Like my blood
Yeah.
sugar is low, and I'm starting to lose my ability to like maintain, because like I
Yeah.
just don't have energy. Like I
It's
can't do it anymore.
it's so funny how like we've been designed to have these things that if we don't get, all of a sudden we're just like non-functional, like
Yeah,
food and sleep and yeah, because those I would say those are the big two. I think sex is
yeah.
up there
Those
too, but like
well,
yeah,
relationships in general. I think you need like relationships generally speaking. Some
yeah,
sort of like community. It's funny though too. It's also cracks me up that we can be like, dude, that's all true, and yet I can live with this body for 40 years and still not be on top of it. You know
yeah.
what I mean? That it's still not recognize it before it happens.
Dude,
Like,
people
how
can
is
live
that?
their whole entire life. Like
Yeah,
I remember when my grandfather died, and he was one of the smartest people, or at least I thought he was one of the smartest people I ever knew. He was a chemist. He worked on the Manhattan Project. He had all these businesses and like everything. And but like when he was dying, he was still like so angry with life. And I was like, I just couldn't get it. I was like, how could this guy who's like the smartest guy I know be so angry when he's dying? Like he's gonna die and he's gonna take all that with him. How could that be possible? And yeah. So
I
I don't
don't.
know.
And
We never really figured it out, I guess.
no, it's funny. Like all the philosophers, I like all the existentialists. I don't. I am convinced. Like I think they, you know, intelligence is like a double-edged sword too, because I think it's like the more you are and the more introspective you are, the harder it also is a lot of times, because the more sensitive you are to things and the more you're also aware of things, like in a multi-perspectival way where you see all the sides of it, and it makes it just hard because it is confusing. It's a messy world. Like it really is. You just
Yeah.
gotta laugh. I think that's the big thing. You gotta laugh. You gotta keep laughing at things. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. So let's see other patterns. I like the point that you made earlier about the positive patterns because like we all have these negative patterns, but it's
Yeah.
also important to create positive patterns and to
Yeah.
create positive patterns in the direction of the life that you want. And oftentimes people call them habits, but
Yeah. Yeah.
it's like
Go whatever you want.
like yeah, you mentioned in the beginning like the pattern of us chatting every week and
Yeah,
making these
it's
episodes.
awesome.
Like that has been probably the most beneficial pattern in my life and totally unexpected too.
Yeah, it was totally just random when we started it
Hmm.
too. It was like, yeah, it was awesome. Like could not imagine not doing it. That's the funny part. But yeah,
Hmm.
I think that's important. I think like when you mention patterns, I think we don't do that enough. Like, look at the positive ones too, the ones that made our lives like better. Whether it was like, taking a walk with your loved one like every day or something in the morning or whatever. Just like these things that you put into your day that become a pattern in your life that are good and that just enrich it. And like, I noticed that too, like finding starting the programming and coding and stuff. Like I love that. And it's so fun. And like I noticed even when I'm really frustrated with it, I'm still enjoying it. And that's awesome. Because it's like the best feeling in the world. Like I know it's right. You have that it fits in a way that like,
Hmm.
other stuff doesn't. And it's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great point. But like, okay, so here's the point that I'd like to make about that is
Okay.
we're both approximately 40 plus
Yes.
or minus. Okay.
Yeah.
So like for all the younger people who may be listening, we're both 40 and we're just
Yeah.
starting to figure out what we actually
Yeah.
enjoy in life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I was talking with somebody, I go to a co-working office and I was talking with somebody there. He's like in his mid to late 20s. And I was telling him about how, I'm doing the master's in cybersecurity, the coding boot camp, and how I'm just like, loving all of it. Like, even though it's hard work, I just love it because it's same thing that you're saying is just like so enjoyable. And I was telling him, but it took me 40 years to figure that out. I went through a
Yeah.
bunch of stuff that I hated. And he's like, oh, that really gives me like some hope. And I'm like, yeah, dude, you just got to try it
Yeah.
out. Like, you just try a whole bunch of stuff. You hate it all, but that gives you an idea of where you actually want to go.
Well, the funny part is like, you know, we don't we don't die when we're 28 anymore. Like most people don't. Like we used to. Like they used to, you used to have tons of kids and something like because like it was horrible. There was death all the time. Like it's just not the way anymore. Like we have much longer lives. You have much more opportunity. There's so much information, and there's so many possible ways to live your life and things to do that how could you possibly know? I mean, if you figure it out, dude, you're lucky. That's awesome. That is great, and I hope you do. I mean, I really hope people figure it out young. But like most of us, I think we're too focused on what other people are telling us, expectations to know what our own things are, and we have to fail a bit or just like muddle through until we realize it's not working, and then start actually asking ourselves, "What do I want?"
Well, here's the thing, the expectations and the pressure. For
Yeah,
up until the past 30 years, there was not a billionaire who was less than 40 years old.
yeah,
There was not. Like Henry Ford, Thomas Edison, the Rockefellers, all of
they
these
were all
people,
really old. Yeah,
they were
yeah,
really old. People didn't hit their stride in life until they were 40 to 60 years old.
yeah,
But then comes along Bill Gates, billionaire at 31 years old. Then comes along Zuck, billionaire at 24 years old. Then comes
yeah,
along Kylie Jenner, billionaire at 18 years old. So like there's all of a sudden this pressure that you need to be ultra successful and very young. Like these
yeah,
people, they were just lucky. They
yeah,
had skills, they were in the right place at the right time, and because of the opportunities available, because of the massive scale of the internet, they were able to make a lot of money in a
yeah.
very short amount of time. But just because they did it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with anybody else because they haven't done it yet.
And it doesn't mean there's other ways not. I mean, there's other ways to do it too. That's the other funny thing. Like, yeah, I think a lot of people forget that the internet boom lasted for a while and made a lot of very young people who happened to be in the right place at the right time. And we're doing stuff. They were doing stuff. I don't want to negate that, but like they were very lucky because it was just like all of a sudden there was just so much money flowing. It was ridiculous. I mean, you look at Google and stuff, and right, Apple. And stuff. I mean, these companies blew up like it was insane. But yeah, there's so many other ways, and it doesn't mean you don't even have to make billions of dollars to win and be successful and be happy. That's the other thing.
Well, most of the time, $1 billion isn't going to make you happy. Like,
No,
look at, I mean, there's so many examples of people who have gotten massive wealth and they're miserable, or have
yeah,
gotten massive wealth and then they realize, oh, that didn't bring me happiness. I'm the problem. Oh.
yeah. Or you see them buy these outrageously expensive things, and you don't ever see them use it. There's no joy in it. There's nothing. Like, it's funny. Like, I was thinking about that the other day. Like, I love the few hobbies I have, the few that I absolutely love, and they're great. And I don't even care if I don't even need any more stuff to do them. Like, I realized that the other day, like, I have all the things I need really to do them. It'd be cool to get other stuff for them because that's always fun, but like, not necessary. And like, I think that's like realizing that is great because it's like you don't need to keep rushing around chasing your tail because that just also leads you down the wrong path, I think.
Yeah, well, doing things you love is one of the biggest factors for happiness. And
Yeah,
people get so lost in this because they think like, oh, if I get a whole bunch of money, then I can travel all over the world. I can party in Ibiza. I can do, and
yeah.
I can tell you from personal experience, I've done the whole digital nomad thing. It's miserable. It's terrible. Like, go do it yourself. I'm not stopping any of you. Go do it yourself because that's like the dream that's sold. You get to live in every country. I traveled to
Yeah,
35 countries. Guess what? They're all freaking same. Like
yeah.
they all have McDonald's. It's the exact same thing as everywhere else. And but I think it's something that you need to experience personally to see the lack of fulfillment there. Because you're at these things that
Yeah.
you thought would have been like the penultimate experience of your life, and you're like, I feel like garbage. I just want to
Yeah.
be home reading a book.
Yeah. It's funny, isn't it? But I think but I think going back to, I think that's why patterns are so crucial because I think you have to recognize your own patterns, both your positive and negative. Just like call it habits, call it patterns, call it whatever you want. You have to recognize these things because I think like it's also the way into recognizing what you really like, the life that's really going to that's really going to be good for you. Like if I had really been focused, like I love technology, I love tinkering with things, I love making things work. I love like if I had paid attention to that earlier, I probably would have gone a different direction. But I didn't. But that's okay. I also liked what I did before, but it's just, it is what it is. Now I'm doing it.
Isn't
Like I
it
think if
isn't it funny though? I was the same way. I knew from like such a young age that I loved
yeah,
computers and technology, and I was so
yeah,
like skilled and gifted with it, and yet I
yeah,
just ignored it for most of my life.
yeah, same. I used to take apart like radios and stuff and put them back, get all kinds of stuff. And I don't know what happened, but like, yeah, it's just like one of those things where you just like, I think, because like you get all these adults your whole life giving you this input that's not necessary. Like it's probably vicarious, right? They probably something they wanted that they
Mhm.
think would be good for you, and they keep pushing you. It's like, so it happens, but like,
And
I think,
also it's hard to notice what you're gifted at because it's your gift. So like
yeah,
for you, it just feels normal. Everybody else is
yeah,
always blown away with how good you are at it, but for you, you're
yeah,
just like, this is so easy. What? Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It is funny. It is, and but I think that's the trick. I think you gotta just be more self-aware, be less self-critical, and just let yourself do those things, and you'll start to see both like your good and bad things. So you can start correcting the bad, or at least working on them, and then making the good, amplifying them.
Well, that's I'm glad you mentioned that because that's one thing that I wanted to talk about is how do we deal effectively with these negative patterns that keep coming up, these things that keep smacking us on the face. Because I kind of think like it's this thing on like a rotary wheel and it smacks us and then we deal with it and then we think we're dealt with it for the last time and it's just coming around slowly and then all of a sudden here it goes, bam, there it is again. By the time we forget it, it just like whacks us again. So how would you say like what do we do to deal with it or effectively?
I always Nietzsche always said that willing something is willing the strength to like overcome the resistance you're gonna face too, and like his idea that like self overcoming is like when we overcome ourselves, that's when we better ourselves. So I think like we have to just be aware of it, and like every time it happens, no matter how it turns out, once it like kind of settles again, like these bad ones settle again, we're back to kind of think back to it. Force yourself to reflect on it. Force yourself to be like, okay, what did I miss? Why wasn't I aware of it? What could I have done differently? So that next time, then try to catch it and try to change it. And it probably won't the next time. It probably, but the more you do it, like I've noticed for myself, the more I've been doing that, the more I am at least acknowledging it and aware of it when it's happening. And that makes so much of a difference. So much.
That's a great one, like an after action report, because then you get to
Yeah.
you get to look at all the lessons learned from it, and you don't get to like because it sucks while you're going through it, but then you don't get to lose the lessons.
And like don't even be self-critical. Just be like almost like an objective bystander report, like what happened to me, like write it down. Just so because like the more like the more the better you can handle it. And like I think there's no reason to get angry with yourself or whatever. Who cares? Because it's gonna happen again. You're gonna have to deal with it again. So you might as well just get over that.
Well,
Good.
this is this is one of the benefits of journaling for people who may
Yeah.
not
Oh
do it.
yeah.
Is like so just having we're talking about patterns, having a pattern of journaling every morning or every night, because then
Yeah.
you can write this stuff down. And when you write it down, it takes it out of the theoretical and all of a sudden it makes it real. But you can just while you're writing for a few minutes in the morning. You can just be like, oh, I went through this recently. Like, this is something that I'm going to do today. Is just be like,
Yeah.
oh, I faced some crazy loneliness, and it turned out I was just tired. Like,
Yeah.
but like being able to do that is a great way to kind of move on
There
from it.
there is something about writing it down too, though. It takes it out of your head, it makes it real. It's totally, for some reason, it really is different. And like I think too, the other thing people don't realize is like people, I think a lot of people do have this like weird association with journaling or something, but like you can be totally honest because it doesn't matter. No one else is reading it. It's private. Remember that. Do it on pen and paper is the best because it's just something you can write, and just you can be honest. And I think it's so helpful because like even if you don't want to say it to other people, you don't want to say it out loud, it's a good place to start talking to yourself, I think, and actually have a real dialogue.
Well, we were talking earlier about the importance of honesty, and like a journal is one
Yeah.
place where you can be really, really honest, and it's
Oh
totally
yeah.
cool. No one's judging you. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I have pages in my journals that was just like fuck. Like, just like
I remember when we were doing that book where you had to write for
artist
three
way.
full pages.
Yeah,
Yeah, where you had to
yeah.
write for three full pages a day. Like sometimes I would have a whole page that was just like F this. I don't want to do this. Just yeah.
You get it
Um
out at least, right?
yeah. One more thing I wanted to add on these patterns that keep coming up. So I'm reading this book now called Loving What Is by Byron Katie. And it's good because she says that like most of our suffering just comes with arguing with reality. And it's like
Yeah. Yeah.
reality always just is what it is, but we have all this suffering and all this pain because we're trying to argue with it. And so like these patterns that come up, one of the things she talks about, and she has like a 4-step process for dealing with these, but like after you've dealt with it, just being willing for it to come up again and looking forward for it to come up again, because chances are it's going to come up again. And
Yeah.
thinking anything different is arguing with reality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's similar to like Dare too, like what he said in that book too. And I
Yeah.
think there is something to that, just like accepting it, just being willing to, and just realizing like, dude, you're gonna have bad days, and like things are gonna happen, and like it's just life. It is just,
Yeah.
and I think that's our biggest problem is we make everything such a catastrophe when it's just we imagine everything's just like, oh, everything's gonna fall apart. Oh, it's like, no, it's not. It's just
Yeah.
life. Like it's just a day, or it's just this thing. Like if I miss this, okay, yeah, it might be. I might have to apologize. I might have to do whatever. But like I can get through it and I can do it again, or refix it or
Well,
whatever.
that's the fears, like the fear of death, that it's all
Yeah,
going to fall apart. Everything's going to come
yeah,
crashing down. And like that's what keeps us trapped or locked, is that feeling. And in that Dare book, he talked about how like all of these feelings that we have, the body will just kind of take care of itself. And if
yeah,
it doesn't, guess what? You're dead anyway. So it's like, what, it doesn't
yeah.
matter. You're not there. So like letting go of that fear and just like being willing to take it on. Because just look historically, every time you've encountered difficulty, you've gotten through it. So like if it's worked every time previously, chances are you're going to get through it this time. So letting go of that fear is great.
It's good too. Once you start addressing these things and once you start trying to work on it, the hardest times then were all in the past because now you're trying to actively do something. So I think that's the other thing to keep in mind too, is like it does get easier because you're at least doing something proactive. Like I think that's the other big thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it keeps getting better.
Yeah.
So that is it for patterns in life. I think we've both had a lot of interesting
Yeah.
stuff that we talked about, and very helpful for me, and I'm sure very helpful for everybody
Always
out
help
there.
for me. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you guys did enjoy this, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Come check us out on YouTube, also on the podcasting services. I'm Randy. That's Danny. I'll see you later, Danny.
Later, Randy.